UrbanFaith. Hello, it's so good to be with you again. It is always a joy and an honor to be able to speak with different people from their faith backgrounds and their journeys. And today we have two authors who are also just amazing individuals in their own rights. We are here with Jonathan Irons and Maya Moore Irons to talk about their book, Love and Justice, their incredible journeys. Jonathan in advocating for justice, and Maya in joining in that justice fight after being a WNBA superstar. I'm so glad to have Jonathan and Maya with us today, and thank you so much for being here with us.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. So, the first question that I have is why did you all decide to write this book? I think that it's important to know a lot of people have never heard you all's story. I know that when I was hearing about it, I was saying, okay, I think I've heard of Maya Moore. I kind of know something about justice, but had no idea of this incredible story of you going from being a WNBA superstar to being a justice advocate, and Jonathan going from being in the system yourself to advocating for others. Can you talk about your journey and why you decided to write this book?
Um, Man, I could not just be quiet, even though I wanted to just, go crawl under a rock, and I just got out of that crazy experience. And thank God we were in COVID, so wasn't a lot of people out to mingle and do that with, because I just had to transition, I had PTSD, and it's just hard for me to trust people, um, from based on my experience. But you know, Maya, when I first told her, I was like, hey, I don't, when I come home, I ain't trying to make new friends. She said, baby, you're gonna make new friends. You need to make new
Mm,
friends. And I heard what she said, and it was good. I'm glad that I did that. And I'm also glad that I had a chance to just share what happened to me, because what happened to me, it's bigger than just me. Um, my experience is going to be used to break some things, some generational curses. It's going to be used to break some things in the criminal justice system that need to be fixed.
mm,
It's going to put some people on notice, because I don't want nobody else to go through what I went through. I just don't want
mm.
that. If there's any way that I can shed a light on people that are vulnerable, like, I wanted to do that. And so that's why I was so graphic in some of the things that I was talking about, and just trying to do it in a clean way, but just share, like, my trauma. And at the same time, I get the benefit because it's healing. Every time that I talk about my story, it helps me. It's cathartic. Just speaking
Mm,
through it and just going over it and just sharing it, because it loses its power every time I do that. And
mm.
there's so much that people can learn and be encouraged by my story. And I realize that. So how could I not write this story and my experience and share it with people that could potentially use it to just change life for other people and remove some of the veils that keep people being attacked and used and manipulated and dogged out and mistreated.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, this was a daunting task, right? We're we've just endured the the trauma of trying to exonerate
Mm,
an innocent person from prison, and then we get married and we're trying to start our life in the middle of a pandemic. Like,
Wow.
that's a movie right there. Just that, right? And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
there's this whole other part of our life now that we're trying to start. And again, it's hard enough. It's like going to the championship game, hitting the buzzer beater, getting, the trophy, and then it's like, okay, now you have to go do this tomorrow. A
Mm,
whole other championship run of building a life outside of on the other side of prison, right?
mhm.
But
mm.
you're playing a different sport now. You just won the basketball championship. Now go do this in playing football. It's like, wait, we don't know how to play football. Wait, hold on,
Yeah.
slow down. But that's what life was like. It was like, okay, now what do we do? Like, none of us have ever experienced trying to heal from the trauma of the criminal justice system, married in a pandemic, and me also not playing basketball. Like, so much. Oh, and let's
Yeah.
write a book. And let's write a book for the people, right? Like,
Right.
it
Yeah.
it was crazy. It was crazy time. But we knew it was time. Like we needed to do this now while it was fresh, while we didn't have, a bunch of kids running around. Like we can focus on going back into that pain, right? Going back into that story. Had a really great um, uh, writer to help us craft it and put two huge stories into something that flowed. And so we had a team around us to help us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's a whole
Mm-hmm.
nother episode of your team. You need a team. But like Jonathan said, part of being a Jesus follower is doing the hard work of shining a light and looking at things that are broken,
Yes.
right?
Mm.
In order to bring healing. You don't stay in the dark. You don't stay looking at the broken, but you have to look at it. When you break your arm, you can't just keep walking around, just with your arm all
Yeah.
limp and oh, you gotta, okay, I have a broken arm. The system of my body, of how God created to function and thrive, the system is broken, right? The system has some things built in it that wants to heal itself, but we also have to help that system get back right. We got to set that bone. We've got to help the inflammation. We've got to rest, right? There are things in place that God has put in place in the system of how we live together for flourishing. And when we see things that are broken, because we have choices, we're human beings, and we've chosen over the history of humanity to break the system, to not trust, to dehumanize each other, to be all about self. And when we see those things, we have to do what we can with what God has put in our heart.
Yes.
To make the system work as it was meant to work. And that's flourishing for all.
Mm-hmm.
And so part of our call that we feel gets us out of bed is how do we bring that spirit to all that we have access to do? And we have access to be authors, right? We have
Mm-hmm.
the power. We've been empowered to be authors. And now that power can go and help and inspire and encourage and equip other people who want the systems of life to be flourishing. And so we took the time to do that. And in that process, we just got to remember all of the ways God has just been faithful and gotten us through and been with us in the hard stuff and the beauty that was able to still be seen in the midst of this nightmare. But yeah, that's why we wanted to write.
I think it's so powerful to have you all lift up your faith and lift up just the nightmares and the brokenness of the system. And one of the things that I'm really curious for you all to talk about is, can you talk a little bit about um, the injustice and that context that kind of set up you all's story? And I just was caught beginning to read the book and to read you all's stories that Jonathan, you came from an unjust situation, right? Like it was already set up for you to be incarcerated. That's one of the things that got highlighted in the book. And Maya, you lived in a very different place and were able to see still the injustice separate, that you didn't come up in, but that was there and needed to be seen. Can you talk about just how the context and the environments that you all were in allowed you to see that injustice in different ways?
Um, I mean, it's not hard. Like kids that are that are struggling and in poverty and in situations that are just unfair and a disadvantage. Like I volunteered with kids down at this school called Peace Prep, and like they are aware, like they're very intelligent. They are aware that like they're not getting the same type of resources and as other kids in other schools. They are aware that their city is riddled with addicts and there's criminal activity that's going on. Like they're aware of these things, and like they may not have as much as another person, and just all of the things. They're aware of prison. They're aware of police. Like
Mm.
like they didn't just make it up. They think like police don't like them. They don't care about them.
Mm.
Um, and 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 I won't say that like that they're making it up. I, there's a lot of evidence that they've told me about. Um, Me growing up in my environment in my life, like I had so many different examples of things that just showed me that like I wasn't treated like everybody else, and it
Mm.
just felt like people were being dismissive. Like I had a teacher put an air freshener under my desk, like because I
Wow.
smelled like smoke, like a school
Yeah.
teacher. Like my teacher didn't. I had so much energy. I was always up and down, up and down, up and down. Like Maya had a teacher that basically allowed her to stand around and use her energy, and she turned it into sports and encouraged her, like, burn your energy off, have fun, be a kid. Like for me, I didn't have that experience, and I was aware of that. I was aware that I was treated different than other kids. Um, uh, I was aware that like I went to a friend's house and they had a toilet. I didn't have one. And I'm like, man, what is that? It's like, oh, that's a toilet. That's where we use the bathroom. I'm used to a 5 gallon bucket and bathing in a tin tub. Like I'm seeing
Wow.
these things out. And then fast forward into prison, like I'm seeing like the racial inequality. I'm like, how is it that we're the minority in here, but there are more black people that are in prison than there are any other race? Like I don't
Mm.
understand this. What's going on here? And then I started to dig into it. I started to look at statistics. I started to read case law and treaties. I started to watch the news. I started asking questions. I started to let my curiosity just run wild, and I got to really see like all the injustices that are happening around me. It got so bad that I overcame my own fear and I started to advocate for other people. I advocated for ICE in prison because they stopped giving it to us for a long time.
Mm.
File complaints about that and basically talk to the warden face to face and like explain like, hey man, this is a basic human right in here that the Supreme Court has already said that we need, yet we are not getting that. And there are a
Mm.
list of other things. Like you don't have to worry about giving all those other things that we're missing. Just give us this. Like just fighting for basic things. Like most people out in society, like don't have to do it at that level, but there are different degrees that are in society. It's like if you have eyes to see, you cannot miss it. You cannot miss it. And I didn't. And so that's why I kind of share some of the things that were happening in prison to me, like things that I could testify to, things that I could talk about and speak into.
Yeah. What about you, Maya?
Yeah, I think when we, were born into the generation that we're born into,
Yeah.
Ava DuVernay had a quote. I think she was quoting someone else about our mindset about how we do this together, and the illustration was, you inherit this house, so we're all living in this house, and we look at the house, and there's mold over here. There's some foundations that are just rotting away. There's, broken windows over here. And we say, we didn't break that window. I'm not responsible for the mold over there. But this is the house that we've been given. And so it's our responsibility to fix it, right? As much as we can, as best as we can. This is the house that we've been given. So it's still our responsibility as a family to repair the foundations, to fix the window,
Mm-hmm.
to do the mold treatment.
I love that.
And it's a beautiful illustration of like we didn't break it, so it's not our fault. None of us, we were born into this generation and we're inheriting a culture, a world, a land.
Yeah.
And so it is our job to do what we can while we're breathing
Mm-hmm.
to restore and repair the broken
Mm-hmm.
things of our house, right? As a community, as a people,
Mm-hmm.
as a nation, as a world.
Mm-hmm.
And so, with those eyes, that's kind of how I see what's been happening in our story. In my story, I had people that modeled for me what it looks like to look at people, right? That's one of the themes of our story is we have to look
Mm-hmm.
at
Mm.
people as people.
Mm-hmm.
First and foremost, that's the fundamental skill, like in basketball. First thing you learn to do, other than dribble, shoot, right? Everybody wants to
Mhm.
shoot. Like if you can't shoot, what are we doing in the game, right? So fundamental skill, you have to be able to see people as
Yeah.
people if we're going to have a chance at living as a
Yeah.
human in this world.
Yeah.
And so I got a chance to have that modeled for me of what it looks like to see. But we need other people who've gone before to help us know, like once we look at that rotten foundation, we get freaked out of like the house, the foundation of the house, it's broken. Like, what do we do? Dad, mom, grandma, grandpa, like somebody ahead of us, help me know how to respond to this and say, don't panic, baby. I know this looks bad, but we can fix this. And then they teach us what we need to do over time to fix this. And so that's what I've been the beneficiary of. I've had people to show me like, hey, Maya, this is something we can do to help this system correct. And then also just being in relationship, right? That's the majority of the work is us not being afraid to be in a relationship with the people who have been stepped on.
Yeah.
If we have
Yeah.
that privilege, right? I had a
Yes.
measure of privilege
Yes.
and I tried to use that to say, hey, I'm no better than you. We're both humans. You deserve to be treated like a human, a basic human need. I'm not talking about everybody should have privilege. I'm just saying everybody should have basic humanity, right? That's the
Yeah.
starting. And then your work ethic or your gifts can kind of, take you where it goes. But basic humanness cannot be a negotiable. And so that's kind of where I came in of like, I didn't know this was happening. We need to do something because we can do something with this house that we've been given.
I think that that's such a powerful analogy of thinking about inheriting the house and still having responsibility, because I think a lot of people, we're just living in the house, right? And saying, oh, well, I didn't break that. And so it's not my problem, when in reality, there's a shared responsibility. And you lifted up your faith in regards to that. And I know that's a really central and powerful part of both of you all's stories. Being Jesus followers, like, we're called to care for our neighbor, to love our neighbors as ourselves. Can you all talk about how your faith has informed your work and your advocacy, and how you all are approaching what you're doing now? Can you talk about how your faith has motivated and played into that?
Yeah. Yeah, as you look into the Bible, you won't find Superman in the Bible. You won't find Batman. You won't find like people that are just flawless outside of Jesus. Like everybody, Moses was a murderer. You could just pick anybody, a character in the Bible, any person in the Bible, and see something.
Yeah.
And what that does is like it lets you know, like you are not alone in your flaws and your weaknesses. And what that does, it calls us to remember when we see other people that are struggling, that are going through things. It calls us to look on them and like, hey, like I have my weaknesses. Like we all need to have compassion on each other. We all need to help each other. It calls us to remember those people that are less fortunate than we are, and as well as people that are fortunate as well. Like we have to look out for each other. God says, remember the prisoner as you are in prison. Remember the hungry. Like, remember the orphan. Remember the
Yeah.
alien. So that means we are supposed to care about these people as if we were in those situations. We are supposed to want them to have the same things that we would want. Like
Mm.
we have to put ourselves in their shoes, and we have to remember them. We have to remember the vulnerable. Like we're not called to just pay attention to the people that are doing right and got all the stuff that's going right in the world, because that's not happening. Everybody's got something going on, whether they want to admit it or not, or whether it's in the forefront or not. We all wrestle with things, and like we are called to just lean into each other and be a part of the community and show up for each other and be present and speak out against injustice and things that are happening in this world. Like and me reading through the faith and seeing that, playing that out, like that to me, that's God talking to me through this word and through other people and through my environment. These are the things I want you to focus on. These are the things that matter to me. Like I'm not asking you to pay attention to like the richest people in the world or how they do things. I'm asking you to treat each other like you want to be treated. I'm asking you to remember those people and care for those people where you can that are disadvantaged.
Yeah. Matthew 25, right? Is, you did for the least of these, you did it to me. And Maya, can you talk about how has it played into this work? Because it's a huge step going from where you were to where you are now, and focused on caring for the least of these, and seeking justice.
I was one of the least of these.
Mhm.
Mm.
Yeah. Man, understanding God's story, right? God has given us a story. And he says there's a competing story though. There's the story of the world, right? We talk about the world, the flesh, the devil. It's like, what does that mean though?
Mm-hmm.
The world it's a way of seeing that is contrary to the kingdom of God. And so if you look back in the Old Testament, there's just some very vivid um, pictures of um, really the Egyptian empire. When you're reading in Exodus, and um, you're seeing, even it's a motif throughout the Old Testament, but just the Egypt representing like the empire mindset, where
Mm-hmm.
there was a pharaoh that came into power and had forgotten Joseph, and ended up being threatened by the prosperity of God's people, of the Hebrews.
Mm-hmm.
He enslaved them. He approaches the situation out of fear, self-preservation, insecurity, wanting to protect my wealth, comfort, and luxury. And so I'm going to take these people and use them, dehumanize them, make them slaves to maintain my comfort, my power, my privilege, my whatever I want. And so that is a model, as a way of organizing, of systemizing a community, that at the heart of it is the opposite of God's kingdom, which is about trust, which is about security, which is about abundance, which is about selflessness, which is
Mm.
about humanizing and including and valuing and benefiting and giving for all. Shalom, right? Everything in right relationship to each other. That's God's
That's
kingdom.
right.
So every day we have a choice to make. Are we going to believe God's story, which is the real story? Or are we going to believe this world story, this empire story? And so we wrestle with that every day, of what story are we going to show is real in our choices and what we believe and how we move and how we act. And I think we just unfortunately see some of these systems that have been set up in our house, right, in our culture, that are so empire, and just crush people and dehumanize and devalue and use and manipulate and coerce, all based off of, I want to preserve mine. Because when you look into the dark stuff, when you look into systems of poverty or injustice, it's going to require you to give something up if you have been the beneficiary of that broken system, right? If you are
Mm-hmm.
at the top of the empire food chain and you look into the bottom, you're gonna have to do something if if you have a human heart in you that sees that that's wrong, right? And so part of my basketball journey was, I'm so fortunate to have been able to feel like I've been walking with the Lord since around middle school, where my faith became my own, before my name became a name. And so I
Mm.
navigated my basketball experience with an awareness of, like, my identity is, I'm God's daughter, and my purpose is not building my name, becoming the best at making the most money, like all these things that I was able to actually be a part of in some way,
Mm.
but that wasn't what got me up out of bed. And so when the time came where God was like really bringing clear to my heart the shift that I needed to make out of that sport and entertainment rhythm into a different rhythm that was unknown. Like, I didn't know what it was going to look like when I stepped away from the game in 2019. But I knew it was leading me towards doing more in this kingdom story that I was learning more about, which required me to give some stuff up, some of my
Wow.
comfort, some of my um, status, or whatever you want to call it, in order to be the hands and feet of Jesus, and show up and do the hard things and get educated, humble myself, learn from people. So when I was able to speak and use my platform, I could be helpful and accurate in trying to encourage and equip people. And so, yeah, my faith it's about seeing God's kingdom as clearly and as rightly as I can, and then being able to live my life in a way that makes that kingdom a reality as much as I can every day. Um, which again is going to probably mean some self-sacrifice, right? Love costs.
Yeah.
That's what Jesus did, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we talk about following Jesus, Jesus sacrificed a lot for love and restoration and redemption, but
Yeah.
he did it for the joy that was set before, for the joy, looking ahead to that future joy, the future joy, right? Like all this stuff we've been through, but it's like, look at us now and look where we're continuing to go to. Like our life just, I think, models that example of when you do the work of the kingdom, like there is a future joy. Like hang on, hang in. We might not see the full benefit of what our lives are going to do, but we're tasting it now in bits until that fullness comes into play. But it is just, yeah, it's the center. It's the center of all that we do.
Oh. Well, I know I'm gonna run out of time on the Zoom, so I just want to thank you all for sharing from your story and your hearts and your passion and your faith. And I do think that your example is an example that so many people need. That Jonathan, your story is unfortunately not unique enough. That there are so many people who are subject to this criminal justice system, that the statistics are pointing to that, but that you offer hope that there is something in the midst of it to be gained, and that is a fight to be fought. And Maya, your story is more unique, but that folks who have seen it and have not been touched by it in the same way can do something about it.
Yes.
And you gave up something. You gave up a lot, can I just say, especially as now we're seeing the WNBA rise in new ways and people have new attention around it like it just happened yesterday, even though it's been around for years and years, that there's more to life than that kind of success. And living out our faith can mean a lot for us. So I just thank you both so much. Any last couple of words for young folks who are out there?
I want to say, man, you can't make this type of story up. You just can't do that. And I'll say this, like in your darkest moments, like don't forget that God loves you and God got your back. All you gotta do, man, is seek a relationship with him. I promise you, you won't regret it. I promise you.
Man. Any parting words?
I would just say, when you get discouraged, because it's part of it, right? If you look into the dark, it's discouraging, but don't stay there. Like there is something, there are people, there are things in motion that are happening that you can plug into. I'd say get plugged in to something, because we can't just look at the dark things by ourselves in a room, right? Like if we're going to look at hard stuff, like you got to lock arms and be like, all right, we're going to look at this together and we're going to do something together. So my encouragement is always get plugged in to something already happening, and stuff will happen out of that.
Yes.
To keep you encouraged and to keep you moving forward. And, like you said, like the Black church has modeled that in just resilient ways for centuries, right? Like it's not just it's not a new thing, right? Like it's there's a legacy there. So plug into those elders. Like there are people there's jewels that are still alive that we can have conversations with, that glean from, and like let us continue to lift up our people who have gone before and make sure they're appreciated, and that we're receiving what they can pour out, because those are team members that need to be honored, and they still have something to offer us. So keep learning, get plugged in and keep learning.
Amen. Well, again, thank you all so much for the time and for sharing with Urban Faith. And I look forward to more people hearing and reading this story. Love and Justice is available to get it, read it, share it, do Bible studies and group studies around it, because we can make a difference. And you guys share some of the ways that we can do that. So thank you again.
Thank you so much.
You too, man. Good to meet you.
Absolutely.